The scene was tense. After 2 days of desperate searching, hope was fading. Families cried. Rescuers whispered that survival was nearly impossible. But then, a trained K9 suddenly froze in the middle of the street, his nose pressed against a storm drain. He barked wildly, scratching at the metal as if he knew something no one else could sense. Rescuers rushed forward, doubtful but desperate. What they found beneath that drain cover stunned everyone and changed the entire mission. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning began like any other in the small town, but within minutes, everything changed. A sudden collapse shook the neighborhood, sending plumes of dust into the air and people screaming into the streets. Panic spread faster than the smoke as families searched for loved ones, calling names that were swallowed by the sound of sirens. The once quiet block was transformed into a battlefield of chaos and fear. Rescue teams arrived quickly, securing the area with yellow tape as heavy machinery rumbled in. Neighbors clung to each other, their faces streaked with dust and tears. Some prayed aloud, while others simply stared at the rubble, unable to believe that homes and shops had crumbled in seconds. The air was filled with the sharp crack of radios, the shuffle of boots, and the endless cry, "We need more hands here." But amid the frantic rush, a quiet understanding settled over the rescuers. Time was slipping away. For anyone trapped beneath the wreckage, every passing minute meant a smaller chance of survival. 48 hours was the cruel line between life and death. They all knew it. That's when the K9 unit stepped forward, dogs trained to sniff out life, where human eyes couldn't see. One particular German Shepherd stood tall beside his handler, his vest strapped tight, his eyes alert. He wasn't just another dog, he was a lifeline. And as he was led toward the debris, hope flickered in the hearts of everyone watching. The handler clipped the leash tighter, giving the command. Instantly, the German Shepherd lowered his head and began weaving through the dust and debris, his nose twitching, ears perked. The crowd went silent, their eyes fixed on the dog. To them, he wasn't just sniffing the ground. He was searching for a heartbeat, for a miracle. Every step felt heavy. Every pause carried unbearable suspense. The dog's handler followed closely, scanning the terrain while murmuring calm words of encouragement. "Find them, boy. Find them." The shepherd's paws scraped against broken concrete, his nostrils flaring with every breath. Around them, firefighters and officers stepped aside, giving the pair space, knowing that no human technology could match the instinct guiding this animal. Hours passed, the sun beating down on the rubble. Sweat ran down the rescuers' faces as exhaustion grew heavier. Still, the shepherd refused to stop. He pressed forward, sometimes crawling under twisted beams, sometimes climbing unstable piles of concrete. Each time he returned, his handler gave him water and whispered, "Good boy, keep going." The dog's eyes burned with determination, as if he understood that lives depended on him. By the 24th hour, doubt began to creep into the crowd. Voices hushed. Was it too late? Families gripped photos of their loved ones, afraid to let hope slip through their fingers. But then, the shepherd's tail stiffened. His body froze, nose pressed hard against a cracked drain cover. He barked once, sharp and urgent. The rescuers' hearts skipped a beat. Something was there. The sudden bark shattered the silence, echoing across the street like an alarm bell. Everyone froze. The German Shepherd pawed frantically at the drain cover, his nails screeching against the metal as he barked again and again. His handler's heart raced. This wasn't a false alert. He had worked with the dog long enough to know the difference. Something, or someone, was down there. Rescuers rushed forward, flashlights aimed into the narrow gaps between the metal bars. The beam barely penetrated the darkness, but the dog wouldn't stop. He pressed his nose to the grate, whining, then let out a deep growl as if commanding them to act faster. People leaned in, straining to hear, until one firefighter whispered, "Wait, did you hear that?" A faint, muffled sound rose from below. It was weak, almost swallowed by the earth, but unmistakable, the sound of knocking. The crowd gasped. Families clutched each other, their eyes filling with tears. Someone was alive. After 48 hours buried in the wreckage, against all odds, a survivor was signaling back. The scene shifted instantly from despair to urgency. Get this open now, the chief shouted. Tools clanged against the metal as sparks flew. The shepherd pulled at his leash, barking furiously, unwilling to move from the spot. His handler knelt beside him, stroking his fur. You found them, buddy. Hold on, we'll get them out. For the first time in 2 days, hope roared louder than fear. The metallic screech of crowbars and saws filled the air as rescuers swarmed the drain cover. Sparks flew as grinders bit into the steel, each second stretching into eternity. The German shepherd barked in rhythm with the noise, as if urging them to move faster. His body was tense, muscles coiled like springs, and his eyes never left the grate. He knew. Time was slipping through their hands. Firefighters worked in shifts, sweat pouring down their faces despite the cool night air. The crowd behind the yellow tape held their breath, whispering prayers into the silence between the grinding metal. Every strike of the tools seemed louder than the last, echoing like a countdown clock. Beneath the noise, faint knocks and cries rose again from below. Weak, but steady, someone was fighting to hold on. The handler knelt beside his dog, keeping him calm. We'll get them out, boy. You did your job. The shepherd whined, pawing the ground, then pressed his nose against the handler's arm as though asking, "But will we be in time?" The bond between them was unshakable, and the man's heart tightened with the same desperate urgency. Finally, with one last shriek of metal, the grate gave way. Rescuers leaned in, beams of light cutting through the darkness. Dust swirled, and a trembling hand reached upward from the shadows. Gasps erupted from the crowd. There was no denying it now. Someone had survived the impossible. Rescuers dropped to their knees, reaching into the narrow opening. Hands clasped together as they pulled, and slowly, a frail figure emerged from the darkness. Dust-covered, trembling, and gasping for air, the survivor blinked against the sudden flood of light. The crowd erupted into cries of joy and disbelief. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Fathers raised their hands to the sky in thanks. The German shepherd barked once, then twice, tail wagging furiously for the first time in days. He lunged forward, straining against his leash, desperate to reach the survivor he had refused to give up on. His handler crouched, eyes wet, whispering, "You did it, boy. You saved them." The survivor turned their head weakly toward the sound of barking, a faint smile breaking through cracked lips. Later, as medics wrapped them in blankets and checked vitals, the survivor whispered their story. They had been trapped, pinned under broken beams, unable to move. Hunger gnawed at their strength, darkness pressed in, and hope was slipping away. But then they heard it, the sharp, insistent barking above. That sound gave them the will to knock, to hold on just a little longer. And it was enough. As the ambulance pulled away, the crowd turned their eyes back to the K9. The German shepherd sat proudly at his handler's side, chest rising and falling with steady breaths, his tail flicking with quiet pride. What many had thought was a mission of despair had turned into a miracle because of him. The chief of the rescue team placed a firm hand on the handler's shoulder. "Your partner saved a life today. Don't ever forget that." The next day, photos of the moment spread across news outlets and social media. The image of the dog barking at the drain and the survivor's trembling hand reaching upward became a symbol of hope. Messages poured in from around the world, praising the courage of the rescuers and the instincts of the four-legged hero. Families of the missing found comfort, knowing that where technology failed, loyalty and determination still endured. That night, the veteran handler sat with his partner, scratching behind his ears. "You didn't just find a survivor," he whispered. "You gave hope back to all of us." The dog rested his head against his handler's chest, eyes closing in peace. And so, from the rubble of despair rose a lesson the world would never forget. Never lose faith, not when a dog is still searching.